They want you to believe everything's fine and under control, that the supply chains are under control and functioning smoothly, that the trade war is being managed effectively. Those were the exact words used by Scott Bessent, a high-profile investor and former advisor to George Soros. According to him, this chaos? It's all under wraps, hidden from the public eye. But take a step outside the headlines and you'll see something very different and alarming. Major ports like those in Los Angeles and Long Beach are seeing traffic drop sharply and unexpectedly. Shipments are being canceled in bulk, leaving containers empty. Tariffs aren't going away. They're climbing higher and higher. This isn't some mild inflation story where prices just float a little higher. This is something else entirely, something more severe. What we're witnessing isn't about things getting more expensive. It's about things disappearing altogether. Imagine walking into your local store and seeing empty shelves. Not because the store is failing, but because the goods simply aren't arriving on time. Groceries, electronics, even medicine, all stuck in limbo, or simply not coming at all. And it's already happening. Behind the curtain of optimistic press releases, electric vehicle factories are quietly stalling production. Why? Because the parts they rely on from China, batteries, chips, rare components, aren't making it through. The lifelines of our global system are fraying, and no one in charge wants to admit it. This is just the beginning of a much larger issue. Stick around, because in the next section we'll uncover how a so-called 90-day pause in the trade war gave people false hope, while the system was already unraveling behind the scenes. Back in late 2024, when the US and China announced a 90-day pause in their trade war, it was sold as a breakthrough. News headlines cheered, markets bounced, and leaders promised that negotiations were back on track. But behind all the smiles and handshakes, something very different was happening. While politicians celebrated the truce, major supply chains were already breaking down. U.S. companies weren't ordering more. They were quietly canceling shipments. Some weren't even announcing it publicly. Why? Because no one wanted to spark panic, but the panic was already creeping in. At the Port of Los Angeles, officials projected a 35% drop in volume. Not next year, but now. That kind of drop doesn't mean business is slowing. It means business is breaking. Ships weren't coming in. Warehouses weren't filling up. Truckers had fewer deliveries to make. This wasn't a pause. It was a stall. And then, silence. It's like watching a car rolling toward a cliff in slow motion. From a distance, it might look fine. But inside, the brakes have failed. The driver's not steering. And the drop is coming fast. During those 90 days, the public was told things were improving. But the reality was, the system was being hollowed out. And just because everything looked stable on the outside, didn't mean it was. Up next, we'll explore what happens when that slow breakdown becomes a sudden collapse, and how it's already hitting the stores you depend on every day. You've probably heard people say, it's just a supply chain issue, like it's some temporary glitch that will soon be resolved. But what happens when that glitch becomes a total system failure, affecting every link in the chain? In the US, over 60% of retail inventory depends on Chinese imports, a staggering dependency. That includes everything from clothing and electronics to over-the-counter medicine and even the key components that power electric vehicles. Let's talk about big names. Walmart, Target, Home Depot, giants in the retail world. These aren't small shops that can pivot overnight or adapt quickly. Their shelves are stocked months in advance, mostly with goods from Chinese factories. And when those shipments stop or shrink, there's no easy fix or quick solution. You can't just restock when nothing is coming in from overseas. The hardest hit areas start with electronics. Laptops, phones, TVs, all require parts made in Asia, primarily China. Medications? A shocking number of basic drugs are made or packaged in China and India. Even everyday food items, sauces, snacks, canned goods, rely on foreign packaging or ingredients. Then there's the electric vehicle market, a rapidly growing sector. A single EV battery can require dozens of components, many of which are only made in China. Microchips? Same story. If just one part goes missing, the whole car can't be built, halting production. Some companies tried to plan ahead. They pre-ordered extra inventory, thinking they could beat the tariffs. But here's the catch. Tariffs are applied at customs, not at the order date, so those goods still get hit. And those costs still get passed on to you, the consumer. Now imagine this. You walk into a store not during a panic rush, not during a hurricane or snowstorm, but on a normal day. And essential items are just not there. Not because you can't afford them, because they don't exist. That's no longer a hypothetical scenario. It's It's already happening in slow motion, right before our eyes. Coming up next, we're going to challenge a popular myth that we can simply shift our supply chains to places like Vietnam or India and carry on as usual. The reality is far more complex, and the solutions are not as straightforward as they seem. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the intricacies of global trade and the future of supply chains. When people hear about problems with Chinese imports, the first thing they say is, well, just move the factories to Vietnam or India. Sounds simple, right? But in reality, that's like saying you can replace an airport with a gas station. The scale isn't even close. China spent decades building a supply chain empire. It's not just about cheap labor. It's about infrastructure, ports, railroads, highways, specialized factories, trained workers, and lightning-fast logistics. Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh, they're growing fast, but they simply don't have the scale. In fact, many of those countries are already maxed out. Factory space is limited, shipping ports are congested, labor costs are rising. And to make matters worse, Vietnam, which was seen as the big alternative, is now being hit with new U.S. tariffs too. The trade war is spreading, not shrinking. Shipping costs from alternative countries up by 23% in just 1 month. And that's before you factor in delays, lower output, and lower quality components. Let's go back to electric vehicles. EV batteries aren't like Legos. You can't just swap in a part from another country. Many rare earth minerals are only processed in China. If that chain breaks, the entire EV industry stalls. No batteries, no chips, no cars. So the idea that we can just shift production is a comforting story. But it's fiction. The reality is far messier. And as these supply chains get stretched thin, the pressure is beginning to show. Not just in factories, but in your wallet, your commute, and even your medicine cabinet. Next, we'll look at how this isn't just a business problem. It's an economic time bomb that's already triggering layoffs, higher prices, and shrinking confidence across the country. The ripple effects are vast, affecting everything from global trade to local economies. Governments are scrambling to find solutions, but the road ahead is uncertain. The stakes are high, and the clock is ticking.